everyone. I apologize that this video has to unfortunately be uploaded late. I was really busy yesterday and the day before, so I should be caught up with videos by the end of today. So without further ado, for this particular Overrated Film Saturday, I thought it'd be interesting to explore another film that I think is largely emphasized, at least around this time of year, as being one of the more good Christmas films, even though I don't really think it holds up as being as good as some may make it out to be. I'm going to kind of explore that today, and as you can probably see by the title and thumbnail, this film is The Santa Claus. In particular, I'm discussing the Tim Allen film, which I believe came out in 1994, if I'm not mistaken. Now, the problem that I have largely with this film is its premise, sort of similar to Jack Frost, which is a film I discussed within my Thursday video, at least within this week of Thursday. And that is the fact that the way in which it sets up even to the premise is a little bit, it's not as clever or as I think funny as it's trying to present itself as being. So basically the whole idea behind this story is the fact that Tim Allen's character, Scott, accidentally kills Santa. Yeah, already out of the gate, that's kind of weird and okay, I guess they're trying to make some kind of funny irony to that somehow. And that's kind of what they try to do, but it almost feels uncomfortable because it's like, oh, this guy accidentally killed Santa. And since Scott accidentally killed Santa, he has to be the one to take the place of Santa. And, you know, he sort of initially ignores this, even though the elves and all of that. And again, this will all be revealed to you if you ever have seen the film. But basically, he sort of denies it, but in the process, the magic sort of happens in the sense that he starts gaining weight for really no reason, and he starts growing a beard for no real reason except that, you know, it's Christmas magic, you know. And I almost feel like that's, you know, it just doesn't come off as funny really to me. I mean, the whole idea of just some guy becoming Santa Claus, I mean, it's almost like we treat Santa Claus nowadays as not as sort of this more commercialized figure. And I almost feel like here it does really feel like that, you know, it's really trying to pitch that idea to the audience. And it just feels very kind of manufactured almost in a way. And I think it just takes away from the enjoyment of the film is the fact that it is trying to base itself off of being that as just opposed to, you know, giving Santa Claus this kind of, you know, more mystical like, I guess giving him that more mystical like characteristic, you know, instead of trying to insert him into the real world. Which again is sort of similar to what Elf tried to do, and I feel like a lot of this, or at least a lot of the premises that did come out of this film, I think really translate into Elf as well. You know, somebody becoming Santa when they're really not Santa. You know, somebody being an elf even though they're really not an elf. You know, it's just kind of, you know, it just feels like there's just some manufacturing going on here. It doesn't really feel like a genuine story. So again, it just seems to try to think that it's more clever than it is almost. And also, not only is this particular film played a lot around Christmas time, around all the different TV stations, but it is also it has also technically spawned dozens of sequels, which goes to show that there was an initial success, which there really was with this particular film. And this film, I think, made a significant chunk of change. and I think what allowed for the sequels to continue on. And I think it's unfortunate because I don't really see how they could have tried to attempt to make these sequels, but they did. And you see the different things that the Santa character supposedly has to go through, in order to somehow be Santa Claus, and it just doesn't feel, again, it's really trying to attempt to insert Santa into the real world. It's really trying to make it seem like we're supposed to really take this seriously. And the thing is I don't think we should really be pushing that angle, because again, it's Santa is a fantasy. It's a fairy tale esque kind of figure. It's not supposed to be something that's really real. So again, and I think that has to do with a lot of the time of how, at least in more modern times, Santa has become significantly more commercialized. And I think when you really look at the characters and the story, there's just not a whole amount of there's just nothing significantly, I think, memorable about the characters or the story, really. And also the way in which the whole story sort of unfolds, you kind of see to the sort of similar kinds of um, setups, or at least modern day setups, because again, this is supposed to take place within the modern world. Um, and again, it's just trying to um, kind of fill in the gaps of fantasy meets reality. And I think really in order to do that successfully, you have to kind of have some smarts. And I think it didn't really have a whole lot of uh, real, I wouldn't say it's not unintelligent, it's just not as smart. At least I think when you really look at how in which it's executed, then it seems to be. Because yeah, okay, this premise of having someone become Santa because he accidentally killed Santa is kind of again, it just seems a little bit forced almost. It doesn't come naturally, and it just makes, I think, the audience, I mean, largely me, feel uncomfortable too. I mean, there's scenes where he's literally getting fat and he doesn't know what to do, and he goes to the doctor, and um, he's growing out the beard and he's all freaking out, and it just doesn't fill yourself with that Christmassy kind of cheer or charm, or it's just kind of unsettling. And it doesn't try to be, um, it doesn't try to push, I think, the envelope in trying to be, interesting or really all that funny or entertaining. And primarily it's designed to be a comedy, but I don't think it really, um, looking back, really attempted that all too well. It seems to all fall a little bit flat as far as the jokes and just its overall approach. I think it just doesn't suit itself all too well. And again, even I'll admit it's still, it has gotten a little bit of praise from the critics, which I cannot kind of understand, in that it is trying to kind of, I think, try to capture that kind of goofy, wacky thing that Home Alone tried to do. But I think there was a certain lack of intelligence behind the whole project, and an amount of effort put really into it, compared to Home Alone, where there was, I think, a lot more going on as far as the plot is concerned and the character development than here, where I feel like a lot of it is kind of forced, and you almost uh, don't really get behind anything that's really going on, because it is kind of, it's not based on somebody really wanting to ultimately be Santa, but then having to be forced to somehow be Santa, and then realizing the whole kind of joy behind it, but at the same time, it's just there's just a certain amount of practicality that I think exists within the real world. That again, that this whole premise doesn't even it doesn't transfer over well to with having the fantasy meets reality. Uh, again, whereas something like Home Alone was a lot more, I think, down to earth and um, a lot more engaging. Whereas here, you kind of lose it already just by the sheer concept, which is to have a person be forced to become Santa and then realizing, oh, it's actually not too bad being Santa. It's just it doesn't really hold a lot of weight as far as a story or really capturing the meanings behind really the holiday season or Christmas. So yeah, I think it's definitely I don't think a horrible film by any stretch of the imagination, but I think it is definitely one that it is a little bit overpraised and uh, over exaggerated as being one of the better. Similar with the Grinch and Elf as well. I think these are probably definitely the top three when it comes to I think the over exposure, especially around this time of year. But I think that's really ultimately all I can say about this particular film. If there are any questions, comments, concerns, I'd be more than happy to answer them. But thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have a pleasant day, week, month, and year, and I hope to see you all in the next video. Happy holidays, everybody. Merry Christmas.